Why is the World Holocaust Forum taking place in Israel this year, and why does this commemoration matter so much? Well, joining us with the answers is Professor Gideon Greif, a senior lecturer at the Jewish Studies Department of Israel's Ono Academic College. All right, so our first question might seem basic to you, but is important. It's been 75 years since the liberation of Auschwitz. What exactly happened on that day?
I would like to emphasize that Auschwitz was never liberated. When the Russians entered on January 26th or 27th of the year 1945, Auschwitz was empty because the Germans took all the thousands of prisoners into what is called the death marches. So
right.
It was an empty place, so they didn't liberate it.
Okay.
Only 6,000 to 7,000 sick prisoners were left there. Miraculously, they were not touched. They survived, most of them survived the Holocaust. So the Russians didn't liberate Auschwitz. Auschwitz was evacuated.
Well, that's an interesting thing that you're saying, especially given all of the kind of
We have
controversy
to be very
we're
accurate
seeing.
because history is a science. It's like biology, mathematics. You have to be very accurate.
So
Yeah, actually,
using
we even
the
have
right
reports.
terms.
Right, so before we get to kind of Russia's role this year in the event, why is this commemoration taking place in Israel this year and not in Poland as it typically does?
I think if you would ask the murdered Jews or the humiliated Jews, the tortured Jews, they would say, it doesn't matter. We want to be remembered
Right.
everywhere. It can be here, it can be there. Of course, the most natural place is Auschwitz because the crime was perpetrated there. But I see nothing wrong in commemorating at Yad Vashem, which is the national remembrance authority. It's the right place.
Right, but this is clearly becoming a political issue in today's political atmosphere rather than kind of a commemoration of what took place. Poland is very upset that the Russian president is going to, or has spoken already today during the event. And Russia seems to see themselves as the heroes of World War II. They liberated the Jews and the prisoners. How does this narrative differ?
The last to complain should be the Poles. You know why? Because of their behavior during the Holocaust. Of course, there were thousands of righteous among the nations who endangered themselves to save Jews. Yes, that's right, we know all of it. But if you read testimonies, and we know everything, the Poles did not behave nicely to the Jews. 200,000 Jews were murdered, not by the Germans, by Poles, who lived with them for 1,000 years. Their property was looted by the Poles. The Poles denounced, collaborated, not all of them, of course. I don't want to generalize, but the Poles should really not complain.
Well, why do they care about that now in 2019?
Because the new government, the current government of Poland, tries to rewrite history, and you cannot rewrite history. Facts are facts. You can argue about the interpretation of the facts, but the facts are facts, and they try to change the facts.
Why is Poland so upset about Russia, about Putin speaking particularly?
You know, in this story, let me tell you in principle, in this story there are only one bad guy, and this is the German. He is the bad guy. The Germans initiated the Holocaust, perpetrated it. All the others were part of this crime, but the Germans are the bad guys.
Yeah, and we're not talking about the Germans at all here.
They should be condemned, and they should be primarily condemned. They did the crime. They did this horrible crime to us and to the world. I don't know if you know that altogether, the number of innocent victims all over the world is not less than 55 million innocent people. Can you imagine? On September 1st, 1939, the country who attacked Poland was not the Soviet Union, was Nazi Germany. It was Hitler's personal decision. So the German army, the Wehrmacht, attacks Poland on September 1st, 1939. It's Germany, not the Soviet Union. Sure. Sometimes we forget this very simple fact.
But there seems to be a difference in narrative about how the war ended and who the saviors were, right? I mean,
and who liberated Berlin? Who liberated half of Germany? The Russian army, the brave Russian army. So the Polish narrative is not the real narrative. The Soviet narrative is more precise than the Polish one, no doubt. As I mentioned, history is a science. You cannot have two narratives about one event, only one.
all right. Thank you so much for joining us.